Councillor Brothers. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of August the 14th. Councillor Sauls, Councillor Brothers, all those in favor? Motion's carried. And adopt the minutes of the special council meeting of August 20th. Councillor Brothers, Councillor Sauls, all in favor? Thank you. Is there any business arising from the minutes of August the 14th or August the 20th? Where are we? Announcements for the mayor. I'm just going to make it real brief. I want to let the public know that we are starting the public process for legalization of cannabis. I think most people that were paying attention will remember that we have just done the first part of this where we disallowed any sales of cannabis in any zone so that we could start this process of going through and listening to the community and the public and get feedback on what they want to see, knowing what the province and the feds are also talking about. So the public process has started. There's an online survey that people can fill out. They can also get a hard copy of that survey if they wish at the side counter in development services. So thanks for staff for getting the ball rolling on this, and our goal is to, if everything goes according to plan and council doesn't have any serious concerns, questions, and wanting to delay it, we are trying to align ourselves with approval with the federal provincial approval date of October the 17th, barring any problems along the way. So ready, set, go on cannabis. Get your comments in. And I hear the first day we've already had over 300 comments coming in, so yes. So first item is 8A is recommendations from committee of the whole, and this has to do with engineering sewer treatment plant grant application. And there is a motion there if anybody is.
Councillor Sauls. Forward. That a grant funding application for phase 1 of the wastewater treatment facility upgrades be submitted through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Green Infrastructure Environmental Quality Substream. And that $3,641,000 of city funds be committed to phase 1 wastewater treatment facility upgrade project.
We have a motion by Councillor Sauls, seconded by Councillor Orlando. Is there any comments, questions on the motion? Councillor Sauls.
Worship, just in reading the report, my only question was just one line there about there being a small change in DCCs if this goes forward, and I just want to ask Mr. Thomas what that means if we know at this point.
Mr. Thomas?
Your Worship, to Councillor Sauls, where are you mentioning? Where are you seeing that? I've just
in the report, it's trying to find on.
I found it. The second paragraph up from the bottom of page 4. It says, should the city be successful in this application, a minor amendment to the DCC bylaw. So not a small amendment, a minor amendment, as in an amendment to the to how to how the bylaw is worded, rather than a major what we're going through now with the DCC bylaw. So minor in process, it could be significant in the dollar value. So certainly not indicating that it would only make a small impact on the DCCs or how that's set up. That would certainly be a decision once we know what the grant is.
Thank you.
And I'd like to take that a little bit further, if you don't mind, but because there's a misconception out in the public that the DCC bylaw, which we're going through, why aren't we putting in grant applications? And it's real clear with the procedures of the DCC bylaw is that you can only account for grants that you actually have been approved for. So this is the process that we would go through, and I would say for the majority of the DCC projects. But to put the DCC bylaw in place and actually have the funding formulas, You cannot rely on government grants that you haven't got. And it's against the law or the procedure that would see the approval. So we've been asked this question time and time again, and this is the process that we would go through. The minor amendment or adjustment that would be later on where you would account for those funds, because the grant is then a reality, it's been approved. So I just wanted to clarify that, because there's so many people that are asking that particular question. Anyways, we're back to the motion of support for the application. Is there any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. And we are on the housing needs and demand strategy through development services, and I believe we have a presentation, Mr. Whitehead.
Yes, Your Worship. Let me just grab, I think the other one has the laser that works. I'm hoping my tables are legible. I just wanted to provide a bit of an overview of the housing needs and demands assessment. It's been completed. We have a final version now in front of council today. The project was undertaken by Dillon Consulting with staff oversight. It was funded by a grant from CBT. The report involved the collection and compilation of StatsCan data, BC assessment data, and a community survey, as well as interviews with housing stakeholders in the community. It's an important document. It takes available data and quantifies it, and quantifies the need for various types and forms of housing in the community. I don't think the conclusions will draw any surprises. It acts really, in my mind, as statistical backup to the gut check that we all have that, hey, housing is an issue in our community. So that's where the value, I believe, in this report is. It's also a necessary component for housing-related grant applications, and it will provide necessary background information in the development of future long-term policies, such as a housing strategy and an OCP review. The first portion of the report looks at demographics of the community. A few of the highlights that stuck out to me, there's the laser. Our population divided by dwelling units, we have a average family house size of 2.3, which is in the ballpark of most housing sizes in the province. What is unusual is our median age is actually 4 years younger than the BC, the provincial median age, which is actually quite substantial. And you can see that in our population chart here. Normally your biggest bulge is going to be in your baby boomers right here. Here's your males and your female. The gray underneath is the provincial average. But what we have is a unique bulge here in the younger middle-aged population group between 25 and, let's say, 50 years of age. And, I think that really indicates to me the draw of Revelstoke to an active lifestyle and the people that are coming to our community. And what's actually happening here is over the last 10 years, we've seen a 20% increase in families with children, which is very substantial for a community of our nature. And you can actually see that starting to be reflected right here in the 0 to 5 and 5 to 9 years, which are, the children of this reproductively active bulge here. So that's very interesting. Median household income is $74,000, which is 7% above BC. I put a caution here in that we're not sure why, and further study needs to be taken to see why this is. Is it because people are moving here with higher incomes? Are there people moving away from the community that can't find housing, that are in lower income brackets? We're not sure. That's something that we've definitely highlighted out of this report.
Could it be because our unemployment rate is lower?
It could be, right? It could be that we don't know, right? It could be that wages are actually increasing in the community. We're not sure. We need, what this highlights is we need to take a deeper dive into that. So the report goes on into more detail. It compiles a whole bunch of statistics around housing units, housing forms, household composition, household income, average housing values, and affordability thresholds, and it culminates in what I see as a very important table in this, which is table 25, I believe. And it takes income ranges and then develops an ideal housing supply to substantiate those income brackets based on the CMHC standard of a maximum 30% of before tax income being spent on housing. So what you can see here, for example, let's go with the $40,000 to $45,000 pre-tax household income bracket, and we report in StatsCan in the census that there's 130 households in that bracket, which is 4% of the households of the community. You take the average of that and you come out with a 30% of that household income, you end up with an affordable max for rent at $1,063 a month, or an affordable home ownership opportunity around $252,000. So you take that and you combine all this and you can come up with some broader categories of housing needs in the community. And those categories are kind of broken down into your subsidized housing, what I would call your mid-market rental or ownership. It's in here as rental, but there's also ownership opportunities in here. And then your higher market ownership opportunities, which is going to be your household costs of $385,000 or more. Generally, that would be your single-family dwellings. And so what the consultant has done in this report is take those targets, the ideal ranges in these broad categories, converted those to units based on family size, then less out our current units of those sizes and affordability brackets or home ownership costs, and come out with the difference. And this is our current identified housing gap of roughly 208 units of subsidized units, 216 market rental / market ownership in that mid-range, and we actually have a negative value here, so that means a surplus of approximately 430 higher-end market ownership dwellings, which will generally translate to single-family detached dwelling units in our community, looking at the housing range. The report then goes on to project future needs to pile on top of this gap based on a modest 0.5% annual growth, which came out of the BC Statistics population projections. So as you can see through this is, there's a strong need for all forms of housing in our community, except for single-family detached. So along with that, all the statistical analysis in this report, the consultant also undertook a community survey, stakeholder interviews, and they used these as kind of a sounding board to validate these findings and to provide additional insight and gain additional insight where the statistics wouldn't speak for those stories and those kind of realities on the ground. So what does it mean for us? As I stated before, I don't think this is a surprising finding that, hey, there's a gap in our community. What it does provide is an essential document that really is the cornerstone for developing a robust, affordable housing program. The report's a necessary component for most grant applications, including BC Housing, CMHC, CBT. They want to see numbers backing up that, hey, there's a demand in the community for this before they want to issue you grants. It provides, it'll form the backbone in the development of the housing strategy. We have funding of $60,000 for development of a housing strategy. That's the next step, to issue an RFP for that. Look for consultants to do that, undertake that project. The demographic portion of this will definitely inform the OCP review, and the report will help us to help the development community understand what the demands, the market demands are in our community to help try to encourage alternative housing forms. Staff, to sum up, are excited about the completion of this report. We're going to continue to work on the affordable housing portfolio. I'm looking forward to the hiring of a Director of Economic Development to help continue to share the workload on this portfolio.
Councilor Brothers.
Just a question, and maybe Mike also has an answer to this, but in terms of the population and the information that we have gathered about our population, is that helpful in any way to our DCC for determining, where our projected population is, and should we take a look at it, and have we taken a look at it?
I can speak to that a bit. There was some hope that those two processes could align because we knew both of those projects were undergoing around the same time. This Housing Needs and Demands Assessment, their population projections came prior to the DCC project. The DCC project was definitely more robust in projecting those, looking at actual properties and development potential in a little more in depth. Our consultant for this project just took BC statistics population projections, which are very high level generally, came up with what I found it to be a number that I believe is more conservative than the DCC project.
Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, I can speak briefly to that. The 0.5% growth that this study has used comes from Ministry of Health's analysis over 25 years of births and deaths and people moving to communities. For BC overall, over 25 years, they're looking at a 1% growth. For Revelstoke, and they actually do break it down to discrete health areas, and Revelstoke is a separate area, and it's just under 0.5% is the number that the Ministry of Health uses when they're projecting what their future needs for Revelstoke look like.
So the housing needs that we just got here is talking 0.5% growth. And the Health Authority uses a 0.5% growth, and for the DCC, we used a 1% growth. If we had used a 0.5% growth, DCC rates would even be higher.
Yes, so if we used a lower growth number, we may have removed some more projects. The other issue with that is that this is all based on census data. What we're looking at is demand for infrastructure in the city, which we know comes also not just from permanent population here, but also from the tourism growth and visitors who may not be here on the date of census, but are definitely here either in the middle of summer or in the middle of winter. So that's I think using the 1%, while it's still somewhat conservative, it definitely includes that potential growth from tourism as well, which I don't believe the Ministry of Health is looking at that in the same way, because they're more thinking about how many beds do we need to provide for long-term care for seniors who can't stay at home anymore, or how many beds do we need in the for a permanent stay in the hospital, long-term stay, and that's more based on population rather than number of visitors to the community.
Mr. Wade.
One thing this Housing Needs and Demands Assessment was not able to do was do a real deep dive into seasonal housing needs and the seasonal population. And we're excited about the TELUS Insights project, which will help inform that arm of our population projections in our community.
So I'm assuming that this study is being sent on to like the Housing Society and organizations like that.
It will be forwarded if it hasn't made it to them already.
All right. I would like to entertain a motion to receive this report. I believe that's what this motion is. Who would like to make that motion? Councilor Brothers.
That the report prepared by Dillon Consulting titled Revelstoke Housing Needs and Demands Assessment, final, dated August 2018, be received.
Motion by Councilor Brothers, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Councilor Nixon, you have your hand up?
Yes, Your Worship. Just, Nigel, when you're looking at that average age in Revelstoke, I think we all get that, but we're also hearing about people that are moving out of Revelstoke because they're not able to downsize and find appropriate housing. So this, I'm really, really pleased to see this study because it's capturing that people don't have choices about where they want to move. And I'm here to tell my opinion from nursing and gerontology for a long time that baby boomers do not want to be put in facilities unless they really don't have a choice about it. So really looking at maybe some deep diving into what seniors would like to see in baby boomers around aging in place housing, around standards where you've got your wider doorways, wider hallways, and capture that when you're looking at land use downtown Revelstoke, because that's what I'm hearing from my constituents my age are saying, when is that land going to move at Mountain View? When is that land going to move at Beeview? And they really want to see that type of housing where they just move once and the big decision of the day is where do we go for lunch? So.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Your Worship. A statement and then a couple questions. I do want to cover the same territory that was mentioned before in that I sit as the Revelstoke Community Housing Society representative as a director there, and this, we really do require this information to bring money in. So my answer to anyone who would say, yeah, we have a housing problem, why do you need to study it, is because in order to fix it, we need to get money, and in order to get the money, you need to fulfill the requirements of the funders, and that's having data to back up what you're doing. Secondly, it was interesting to read through. There's all kinds of information in there. There's all kinds of details, some stuff that was surprising, some stuff that wasn't. But there is, it's a valuable piece of information for lots of people. So I do encourage people to read through it and see the situation that we're in. I had a couple questions. First is just in response to questions that I've received, and that is, in general, what was the approach for the breakdown between looking at the city of Revelstoke as well as surrounding areas? It is reflected in the document, but just in terms of what the approach was for there, I would be interested in knowing a little bit more. And then I believe the last direction the council gave to staff was to present options for a housing strategy, and it's mentioned near the end of the report as well as in the slide up there right now that housing strategy RFP is next, so I'm just looking for a bit more of an update on exactly what the next steps are and timelines as well for that.
Yes, through your worship, as far as the breakdown as to how the study looked at purely within the census area boundary of the city of Revelstoke, so these numbers are only within city limits. As far as options for the housing strategy, we can certainly go back and review the last discussion we had with council on that and the resolutions and make sure that we're bringing back what we need to bring back prior to issuing that.
And is there a timeline on when we could...
It's up in the air right now. This was chiefly Nicole's bailiwick, so we're trying to fit in affordable housing gaps wherever we can in our work weeks.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Councillor Lindo, we are on 11B.
Oh yeah, I have a conflict due to business relationship with the proponent here.
I'll bring the next one forward, Your Worship, that the special event permit for the Luna Nocturnal Art and Wonder Festival be issued.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
This is a wonderful shoulder season event that the Parks and Rec and the art community in our town have done a wonderful job last fall, and it's exciting to see that it's grown even bigger for this year. So it's a great, great thing.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I hope the Luna Festival, you look at that last housing needs and demands assessment, and looked at that, all us baby boomers that have trouble staying up late at night, and they gotta have a lot of these events like the daytime or early evening. Okay, I just thought I would point that out. There is still a few of us up there. Anyways, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. You got our counselor there? Next item is communications. 13A is the UBCM Green Communities Committee letter. I think it would be nice to offer congratulations to staff for the initiatives that are getting us this new branding that we can use as a, what do they call it? Green community or climate?
Climate leader.
Climate leader, that's it. Anybody have any other comments? I think this is a real good news story for all the initiatives that we've been doing for all the years, and congratulations again to all the staff that are involved. Mr. Whitehead, you're going to do a presentation on the cannabis update?
Your Worship, yeah, you hit most of it off on your announcements, but I can just put up the project schedule just to recap with everyone where we anticipate to go. There we go. A little bit small for font. Yeah, Your Worship, you hit it off. We've kicked off the public engagement portion. Great feedback so far. Some great individual feedback, people complimenting us on our engagement process, the amount of information that's out there. So that's all good to see. The project timeline here, I just wanted to reiterate that this project timeline will get us to adoption of regulations prior to federal legalization of cannabis. I wanted to point out that, as part of the engagement strategy for this project, we do need to recognize that land use planning processes are dynamic in nature. We do recognize that depending on the engagement feedback that we receive, that we're prepared to adapt the process as necessary. So, should the project team determine from either community, committee, or commission feedback that the engagement process needs to go deeper or get more involved, then we'll bring options to council on how to adapt the process and what that would look like as far as it adjusts the timeline or if it does at all. So, aside from that, as the mayor said, I encourage everyone to go on our webpage, get the information on the process, take the survey, and the survey closes at 4 p.m. on September the 10th.
Any comments, questions? Councillor Nixon.
Just, we do everything by web and we do everything online, and I think we need to remember to include the voice of seniors, and I think they should have a voice in this, and we advertise that we have paper surveys to be picked up at development, but would it be possible to use our social coordinator and take some surveys down to the seniors?
And, is there a possibility we could have these at the community center, which is right, they're already there?
They're already there?
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So the process is now starting to change our bylaws to allow, and again, encourage people to fill out the survey whatever way is convenient for them, and get that feedback in so we can keep this process moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Yes?
Your Worship, just one more question. You'll probably hear down at UBCM when you go about what percentage the province will be giving communities of what's collected from taxation?
I'm hearing a little bit. I think the UBCM is pushing back, trying to get a little bit more in anticipation of increased policing and also working by law enforcement as well as planning and development services too. So,
Yeah, I think I heard for year one, they were going to retain the majority of the revenues to deal with setting up the liquor and cannabis regulation branch and other initiatives, and then they'll start sharing more later.
Furniture.
30% or something, 420?
yeah, 420, yeah.
Spike at 425.
I got a whole bunch of cannabis jokes I can bring out if you want, but, Questions from media? What? Looking for a motion pursuant to section 90.1A, D, E, G, K, the community charter to go in camera. Councillor Brothers, Councillor Nixon, all those in favor. Motion's carried, thank you.